yeah, I actually do care about this person. This person is in pain, and if I just make a tiny effort to reach back out to them, everything could change so much faster than it otherwise would.
Welcome to episode 1 of the B Pod. I'm your host, Louis B, and today I am interviewing Eric Wermedal, and we are going to be touching on themes of vulnerability in relationships, audacity in life, and identity through the decades. And it is a wonderful conversation, and I appreciate you taking this journey with us.
Welcome to the B Pod. I am Louis B. I'm here today with Eric Wermedal. Eric
Wermedal, right here.
It's a pleasure to be with you, man. And I'm not too much on biographies, but I guess I just want to share that first time I ever met Eric, I was in college at the time. I think we were both around probably 23 years old, and I was living with my brother, who Eric worked with, and this guy kind of comes over for a Packer game, and I just remember this guy, he's kind of got, longer black hair and a red do-rag and a black mustache, and didn't give a half of a shit about the Packers, and I was like, who is this guy, and I was interested, and I knew that there was something different about him than me. And actually later that day we went over to his place and we played some music together, and it was just magic, and I'll never forget that. And we've been a decade together now, and I guess that's where I want to start, Eric. I'm curious. Now we're getting into our 30s, and back then a couple 23-year-olds, and I'm just curious how you'd start to kind of flesh out. What do you know about that version of yourself from where you are now? Like, who was that guy?
That's an excellent question, Louis. I didn't give a shit about the Packers. That's good read of your guy here. Still don't. No offense, rest of Wisconsin. I, at 23, work in Noel group with your brother Lauren. I was kind of carefree, just 100% coasting on $8 an hour, doing the barest minimum ass call center job I could find, graduating with a C average, and getting the fuck south to Madison, where I've been since. I'm not sure that I've changed a whole lot. I think you feel the stress of wanting to adapt into more of a 33-year-old typical lifestyle, but I'm still just working a job where I can leave it at the job and going home to play the drums.
Yeah.
I'm probably somewhat more self-possessed. I've got my hair out of my face now. I grew a full beard, left the mustache in 2010.
No matter what you do, it works, man.
Thank you, Lou.
It definitely works. And that's what I was going to go into, is kind of the through lines versus the consistencies about who a person is versus the things that do continue to change. And I guess knowing you, I would agree that you've always struck me as being a guy that's kind of very self-composed and very much knows what he wants and who he is, and you don't seem like you really overcomplicate things. And I guess since we started here, I'm just going to kind of jump in, because one thing as of late, I think relationship dynamics always fascinate me, and I know over the last months talking to you, it just seemed like you had taken on a little bit more of that stress, in terms of who am I? What am I doing with my life? Who am I in society? What does my future look like? And it seemed to me that part of this was, planning a life with another person. And I'm just curious how you'd start to talk about how that changes the equation. Being a single guy living in a place, working a job, and all of a sudden thinking about, kids, financial security, and all these things that all of a sudden just throw all this weight on you.
Yeah, it's easy to get nihilistic about it. That's certainly the way the internet would push me on a given day. If I were to search out the front page of Reddit, the memes are thick with despair. And
what do you mean by that?
Well, late stage capitalism is such that we're kind of pushed to feel like the good life is unattainable. But then I look at a guy like you, who owns a house, has a kid, doing great in this world without having a permanent job, just podcasting, writing books. It's inspiring, and it shows me that maybe there is kind of an opportunity out there for anybody to put aside the negativity that's so prevalent in modern middle-class society and embrace that they can get by on less and do more with an appreciation for the time that they would otherwise be sacrificing.
The time, yeah, and the youthful time. And that's something I think that I become more and more attuned to all the time is like, I'm not going to be 32 years old again. You know what I mean? That 23-year-old is gone, you know, and this body that I'm in now has more aches and pains than that body did. And I see enough older people that talk about the aches and pains that they deal with that I recognize, like, this youth is not to be taken for granted. And since you brought it up, one thing I would like to, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'd be curious to get your reflection. I'm not necessarily a guy that believes we have to dive into the past for the answers and dig up everything, but I have recognized that I have the ability to live with a little bit more carefree abandon than the average person, and I would just like to be honest and just upfront about the fact that part of that for me is because even though at this point I don't currently have a lot of money, there's always been security in my family. There's always been money in my family, and frankly, there's always been a job in my family with this family trucking business, and so I can work as much or as little as I want and just know that that's always there and know pretty well that people are not going to let me starve. And I think that that's something just to be upfront about. All jokes about unworking aside, like, I do have to spend time in the truck and it serves me, but you know, there's some of that security, and I, as opposed to people that I've met that do actually grow up poor, they do not want to even sniff that again. And I'm curious, both in terms of material things and in relationships, if there's anything that you can identify, like how you're influenced by where you come from, you know, and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, an interesting avenue to go down. I was today forced down this avenue because of my career. We all did an HR exercise today. 20 of us in a room talking about our personality test. We took the DISC assessment, D-I-S-C, and wouldn't you know it, I came out on the other side conscientious and supportive, somewhere in between there. It's like the dead-ass line.
You don't say.
The S and the C of the D-I-S-C, I am so threatened by chaos, Lou. That is a central truth to my personality. And I think that is probably born of my upbringing in a very conservative, religious, bootstrappy, but still not kind of cresting the middle class arc. It was always just the work ethic of central Wisconsin Lutherans. So the idea of quitting a job without another job lined up just keeps me up at night. It's
And you did that?
For a time, yeah. It was extremely stressful on me and my relationship, but it was a function of the relationship I was in. I was basically ultimatumed into quitting my travel job because I was on the road constantly and not spending enough time creating security for my partner, who also craves security. I think the craving of security is central to most of our mid-adult years, given that there's so much instability ambient in the planet.
Right.
To lean into that is extreme courage from my perspective.
And I think that's a critique that I have, and I try not to be an overt capitalism basher. You know, when I was in my early 20s, it was different, but I think that the more honest conversation lies in is, where is that good life? Because I also can acknowledge that there is a point at which you might want to have some money saved up when you're older. If you're looking at having kids, you may want to have some money. But as you said, there's the one piece of security that keeps you traveling with the job, and there's the other piece of security that keeps you home with your relationship, and there's the piece where you quit the financial security to be more with the relationship. And I'm curious if you could identify a sweet spot for yourself, or even just identity at work currently.
Yeah, good points. Having a job feels like the sort of security that enables me to embrace chaos in certain elements. Much like having a relationship can be the security that enables you to embrace chaos.
Right.
Those anchors and the size of those anchors are so central to the considerations we have to make for ourselves. And the bigger the anchor, the harder it is to untangle yourself, edge further into the ocean.
A curiosity that I have that I haven't quite parsed out yet does security exist beyond sort of the mythic nature that I think is dealt to us by society, where it's always the nature of capitalism is that we all keep spending, and that we all keep striving for something different. And I think there's always this thing, but when I get a little bit more, I'll be secure. When I get a little bit more, I'll be secure. And I'm curious to you, does security exist?
No, I think probably it doesn't. For all we talk about it, it's so real in the moment. That's presence, right? Presence is security.
How is presence security?
Unless maybe you're just reckoning with the fact that you're starving and dehydrated and gasping at an oasis that ain't gonna appear. But I would say by and large, presence is an opportunity to ask yourself if you're actually in danger or if it's just your anxiety talking.
Right. And I saw that on a bumper sticker years ago. I thought it was awesome. Don't believe everything you think. That's actually one of the beauties of being a truck driver, is that for years and a decade now, I've gotten to observe my patterns throughout the day, throughout the year, throughout the weeks alone. And I can see that in the morning I'm very optimistic. And for me, that's when I make the most of my decisions. And then by the evening, everything goes to hell, and I'm kind of just thinking I'm totally screwed and everything I do is just dooming me, which may be true. But what I've tried to do lately, and it's kind of an experiment, is I've tried not to make too many major decisions based off of fear and fear alone. And I'm curious how you recognize fear in your decision-making process, and what, as somebody who seeks security, how does fear look and how do you reckon with that? Whether it's deciding whether you want to continue in your relationship or deciding whether it's time to jump out of this job. Where is fear and what do you do with it?
Oh boy. I'm still finding it. I'm still uncovering it because I'm still learning to listen to a different narrator for all of my experiences in this lifetime. So one thing that's really helped me of late was a lady who stood to testify or speak, whatever they call it, at this Quaker church I've been attending. She came forth with a story about a person witnessing two visions of heaven and of hell. And the vision that this character saw of hell was a large pit surrounded by a bunch of souls grasping onto these ladles with extra long stems. The handles of these ladles were so long, and the pit they were circling was filled with soup. The only thing that would sustain them, they're dying of hunger, and they are moaning, wailing, agonized over the fact that they can't bring that ladle close enough to take a drink of the soup. The handle's too long, they're lost in their pain. And from there they transition to heaven. Heaven also a pit full of soup, in this analogy.
Was this an actual vision or is this just an analogy, man? I gotta know.
Quaker drugs, babe. I don't question the method. I just appreciate the message. These ladle handlers, same ladles, same length of ladles, use their spoonfuls of soup to feed their neighbor. And if we could all take that image of putting aside our own anxieties of how we're unable to support ourselves and channel that into ingenuity around how we can benefit the person next to us, I think that's really a strong new narration to take into your life.
Absolutely. And I have, I'm plugged into some communities that are very centered around helping people that are at the lowest point that humans often get to. People who are homeless, lost custody of their kids in prisons. And I've just recognized, I think one thing that interests me now is that everything is like self-help and self-care is just everywhere. Help yourself, and so I think that the common narrative is, I'm not feeling it today, I'm stressed, I'm depressed, I have this trauma, I'm going to sit inside and take care of myself today. And my direct experience has been, and it takes a little bit of input, but that when you feel that way, the thing that will most quickly get you out of that space is to do something directly for somebody else. And it's 100%, and it never fails. And so what you're saying, that's the hell that I see in that analogy is me sitting here with this spoon that's too big in the heaven is frankly the fact that not only am I helping somebody else, but you always do somebody a favor by allowing them to do you a favor. And
oh my God.
have you experienced that? And how has it shaped you?
You make that bond constantly. As long as you're living that kind of evolutionarily prescribed social existence, we humans are hardwired to gravitate toward and benefit from. You make yourself antisocial by pushing too hard into your anxiety that you can't drink your soup.
Can you repeat that sentence, please?
I'm glad it's recorded.
You make your own anxiety by, I don't know, diving into your perception that you can't drink your own soup like that. Yeah, I'm glad it's recorded as well. So.
Oh, yeah, worry about that too much, you lose your damn mind.
Yeah.
And there's so much agency any one of us in any state can often be pushing out into the world. Not even the world, you get your neighbor back on a soup wagon.
Absolutely.
That's a reason to live. And it's the same circumstance, heaven or hell. You make it what of your circumstance that you're able to. And it's hard to think of because you're panicking. Panic is a loud voice, but if you train yourself, you can hear the other one.
And you talked about that. You talked about subscribing to a different narrator within yourself, and I'm curious, where is that narrator and how did it come to be and when did it come to be? And did it actually come to be? Do you have a secondary narrator?
I focus so hard on what my parents were able to do. They're not people of means financially, but they're people who give back in so many ways to both relatives and their friends at church. They're really giving it above and beyond attention, being caretakers for the people in their lives, and I can see exactly how much good that does for people. Giving your grandmas a call like once a week blows their minds.
It's everything. It's everything.
Write you letters. It's the most effusive love you can hear on a phone. And it's such a useful tether to a quickly disintegrating past that you'd otherwise have to get like a bloodless version of via your genetic mappings.
Right.
Which is available, but it's not narrative.
It doesn't sound like the same thing. And one thing that I just want to touch on as a man who now has a daughter who's going to be 4, I'm not a guy that stakes his personality and identity around being a parent, but I do take the lessons, and I just find that for me the happiest thing is just to see the love that I've come to see from my parents geared towards me, going through some hard times recently, and also geared towards my daughter. And on a regular basis, I get to go home and spend nights over there and just see, my daughter like, Grandpa, let's go. And Grandpa my dad is kind of plodding along. And this isn't the guy 20 years ago you would have imagined plodding along over a toddler. And it's just, and the gift that they both give to each other is the gift of presence. Ella, those kids, it's like, I'm present, good or bad, and Grandpa and Grandma put themselves in that spot too.
It's so easy once somebody's opening that door and making that effort. As a granddaughter to a grandfather, as a boyfriend to a girlfriend, reaching out, making that first step is everything.
Absolutely.
Open that door.
Yeah, and in terms of that gift of presence, honestly, I think that the reason that I have continued to gravitate towards your presence over these years, because I don't do it with everybody. There's I have a high turnover rate in the people I spend time with. And one factor that I just value so much is somebody that actually attentively listens. And I don't remember when we met each other if you were that way, but I'm curious, do you think that's your nature, or is that something that you try to cultivate? Just that depth of presence to actually hear what somebody's saying, and internalize it and think about it, because it's rare. It is rare.
I appreciate you telling me that. That's a nice compliment. I like to think of myself as a good listener, and I feel like a part of that is just me being an introvert. I prefer to listen as opposed to talking most of the time. And I love hearing different people's perspectives. I know my perspective, or sometimes I don't. Oftentimes I'm like in a very liminal space with what I feel about any given topic. I'm not a man of conviction, Louis. I think that probably hasn't changed. And so the perspectives of those around me, whom I find to be insightful and curious about the world, less rigid, or even really very rigid people. I like all of them.
Very rigid people can be interesting, but I want to touch on that absence of conviction. And just, do you remember as a child and as a younger person how that felt to experience the world with this absence of conviction, being around people that potentially had more convictions, whether or not? I mean, I think we've all experienced this, that a lot of times the guy with the greatest conviction or the woman isn't the person with the most knowledge or expertise or insight on a topic. And I just say that because a lot of years for me, like just being a kid, I always had a sense that everybody else knew stuff and I just didn't know anything. And I think that the big change for me, one of the big changes of adulthood that's been liberating, is realizing, like, I don't know anything. And if I can just acknowledge that, and there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of honesty in that. I think there's a lot of humility in that, and frankly, I've seen enough patterns of all the knowledge changing that's like, what's even, I think at a deeper level, we can't know. And so, but I'm just curious if you ever experienced that lack of conviction, because for me, I was just experienced as being, dumb or uneducated, whatever it was. And I'm curious if that ever was a point of self-consciousness for you.
Oh, extreme self-consciousness. I think that's a big reason why I prefer to listen than talk. I don't always feel like I've got enough facts to back up my bullshit. I would rather hear what other people have to say or read a lot about topics. And I don't know, as I sit here saying I don't have convictions, I'm also a guy who's at times and even now had pretty extreme convictions about like what kind of music I'm into or what... I mean... I
remember the synthwave days. Years and years. Eric, what do you listen to? Still on the synthwave? Yeah, still on the synthwave. And
sorry, nothing but synthwave.
And let's go there. I think that the music conversation can be extremely boring. If somebody would ask me, what kind of music are you? I feel like that's the most non-starter of questions. But with you, what I would say that I can deduce from your taste in music is that the only through line is that none of it makes sense to me. Like, if ever you pick out a record off the stack, I just know. It's just like, this isn't going to make any sense to me. And I can't figure out what the consistency is. Like, one night it's,
Your warm, open heart, Lou. Sticking with me through all this.
It's Sailing. Who's that guy that does Sailing?
Christopher Cross.
Yeah, we're at your place. You're just playing this vinyl. In the moment, I'm like, yeah, I'm giving this a chance.
I'm trying to set a mood.
Yeah, and
light a candle. Two guys in a living room.
But I know you're intentional about it, and I'm curious, like, what is it? What is the through line with the music that you like? And I'm not talking technical. I'm talking more at the level of the magic or the level of the spirit. What is it that you look for, or that catches you? Maybe you don't even look for it.
I mean, probably Audacity. I think that's a good word.
Audacity.
Yeah. It takes audacity to be as smooth as Christopher Cross was.
It does.
That guy was fully of conviction that a little wind chime had to be dropped in every 30 seconds. And God bless him for it. It makes the track. And it makes yacht rock, which is a genre of people who are not sarcastic about wanting to be as smooth as possible. They're good damn musicians and they know it, and they're dialing it in to the absolute best of their ability to make the smoothest sounding music. And I also like freak ass noise rock,
which has a lot of audacity.
To waste my time with feedback.
Yes.
I want it.
Yeah. It's really fascinating that you say that, because you're always on different things. I'm on like one record at a time, and that's it. One record. And lately,
My
like
battle rapping boy.
Literally on repeat, it's been Tonight's the Night by Neil Young. And the only thing that I can see is Audacity. It's just like, this guy put this out, and to me it's just sort of in adherence to a deeper artistic vision. Like, this is what this record wanted to be. It's like, he could have done this better technically. He could have done this better conceptually. When I say better, this is what it's supposed to be, and I keep going back to it because I'm just like, how does a person actually come through with this?
That's funny. Neil Young is a man of means, if ever there was. You're right.
Yeah.
He could do anything he wanted.
And he did, and he continues to. And my friend, I have another friend that's really into music that shared that when Tonight's the Night came out, so the opening line, Bruce Berry was a working man. He used to load in a Econoline van. Eventually talks about Bruce Berry died on the main line. And so this record was born of, one of their roadies that died from speedballing. And so these guys got together and got drunk and mourned. And I guess from what he said, they didn't, again, I don't have conviction on this, don't cite my sources, they didn't release the record right away, but they toured it. And so they're on this tour, and everybody every night is pissed because they want Harvest, and they're getting Tonight's the Night. Ooh. But just for a guy to go night after night, and I feel that, and I really try to practice that, where it's just like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep doing it, because frankly, part of my gift of presence is that I feel like the world is better with people that have the guts to do what they feel like they're supposed to do.
Oh, and a hard bomb on purpose. Neil Young is a brave, brave man.
Where's the security and the audacity,
He rhymed man with van, Lou. That is not something maybe that a 60s Neil would have chanced on a record.
So who is Eric Wermedal as a musician? Because I know, and I just want to give this story because it's a great story. So that first night, I meet Eric at the Packard, and we go to his house. He hadn't really played in a band, just a nerd sitting in his house drumming with his mustache and his do-rag. We hadn't played in a band. My brother's a guitar player. We go over there. My brother's screwing around with his pedals. Me and Eric just start jamming. And it's just like, yeah, I guess this is what it is. First jam I've ever had with a drummer. Just magic. That first night, we got 2 songs down. 3 months later, we played our first gig at the Wapaka Rec Center.
Drunk off our asses.
Which I don't know how you get a gig like that, but it's just a bunch of 23-year-olds drunk playing sloppy psychedelic rock to 12-year-olds that didn't give a shit.
Yeah. Oh,
And
they
we just,
hated
and
it.
that was Audacity. Like, the music we made was the Audacity, and I'm curious if, like,
Full strength coffee house lighting.
yeah, like, how do you do that? How do you do that as a guy that, that goes for security? How do you inhabit that Audacity, or do you?
It's the shield of drums, Lou. Shroud me in kit, and I'm off to the races. That is core to my feeling. That's the anchor, right? The anchor I was describing. Some level of competency on the drums and the force field they present. I don't hate that either, but ultimately I think it is just the fact that I know I'm gonna be able to hack my way through whatever 4/4 blues dirge we happen upon.
Yeah, especially
Even off my ass drunk. That's just something that I got in me. Off my ass drunk helped with the stage fright, to be frank. There's a certain amount of courage in the juice in my 20s, but by and large, I just wanted to move out of the basement and prove to the world that I actually play the drums.
Yeah. And me and Lauren were shocked that you were not in a bunch of bands. Now you are, of course, but...
it was special being with you guys, too. Let me not downplay that.
Oh, yeah.
The alchemy we felt from day one in the basement. Because like you said, I'd learned years later that you'd never played bass before we started that night.
No.
Insanity. I thought y'all were out of my league.
Yeah. And essentially, we've worked with other guys, too, and just realized, like, you can't just do this with everybody. I need to go grab a drink.
Godspeed.
You good? You good?
I'm following you.
There is another top I was going to... Oh, yeah, prove to the world. Yeah, prove to the world.
I'm good. Let's do it. All right, I'm good. Happy to. Get a little bit. As much as possible. You got a great ass, by the way, Lou. Not enough people probably tell you that.
Hey, man. Every once in a while I hear it, but I appreciate it. I need to go like this more often.
Here.
All right, I want to jump on that. You said I wanted to prove to the world that I could play the drums. And this is something I think about a lot because part of my past was in a cooperatively owned business with a lot of other people my age. And from being close with those people, a lot of what we were doing and a lot of what's important to my generation is this idea of proving to the world X, Y, and Z. And that's a hard place to be. Because when you're proving something to the world, it's hard to take a nap. Frankly, it's hard to be a friend. It's hard to listen. It's hard to slow down. It's hard to eat a meal. If you feel this constant force of what are the world's expectations.
Inadequacy.
Yeah. And so
it's an antisocial kind of sensation. you feel extra from the group in that mindset. You've lost that thing, that sense of belonging that you used to have, because you feel like your friendships are based around the productivity. And sometimes they probably are. Like, not everybody's generous with the people who feel like they need a little brain freeze.
Right. Yeah, and I just had a little bit of a brain fart myself.
Sorry, I summoned it. Manifesting.
Generous, yeah. Proving, oh yeah. And it was pointed out to me, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in this, that self-loathing is every bit as selfish as, too much ego power.
That's how you light under a bushel basket, friend.
Either way, it's just, this is me, I'm a piece of shit, or I'm the man. And frankly, I oscillate between those states quite often. That's the majority of what I spend my time doing.
And what beautiful vulnerability you offer the world in either moment.
Right. If
We're
you can
only
be
as
honest
good or
about
as
it.
pitiable as anybody surmises to anybody individually. I mean, that's their problem. All we can do is try not to silence ourselves by way of protecting ourselves.
Which is sometimes the easiest thing to do, and that's, I guess, I don't try to go at things with, an underlying agenda, but part of what I'm interested in is just hey, if you feel this way, you're not the only person. If you feel like you're the dumbest one in the room, and frankly, it's probably time to work towards getting over that, because A, nobody's thinking about you that much at all, and B, if you have a gift, share the gift, even if it's something stupid,
Oh, yeah.
Share the gift.
Especially if it's something stupid. That opens the door.
How does it open the door?
You think I was planning on recording a podcast today? I get a call from my ambitious, fearless friend Lou Dog, and I say yes to that sort of thing. And I'm damn glad about it.
I appreciate that, and I guess now I will reveal that there's a long-standing dream between Eric and I to record a podcast in a sauna, and so indeed we are in a sauna in a bunker. There may be a tornado outside. We're just here recording, and I think it's time for a break, not for an advertisement, but just because it's hot, and we will come back on the selfishness of ego.
Stay tuned.
And we are back. Whew. All right, Eric, it's time to go there, man. I feel like this is the dynamic that's just the most interesting dynamic in the world, and that is the relationship talk.
Okay.
So
I thought we might get there.
And I guess for me, I'm coming at this, like, my perspective at the moment is a guy that's been single for a little while and is relatively comfortable there after doing some work to get comfortable there. And you are a guy that's been in a relationship for a while and in kind of a period of fluctuation. And I guess the first question I want to ask, because you've been there more recently than me, just the beginning dynamic of a relationship, like what does that do and why does it do it, and what kind of pits does it end up dragging you down in if that's the way it goes, or relation, just beginning of a relationship, what comes to mind experientially?
That's a great question, Lou. I sometimes think, like, if we lived in the same city, maybe I wouldn't need to date girls at all. I could just have great conversations with you and not diversify as much. But that's what draws me in. I find, anymore lately, ladies on Bumble, typically. That's been my trajectory for a little while.
You actually have success setting up dates on Bumble? That's amazing.
And Steve, reasonable. I can list a job. I'm 6'2". I don't know.
You're not a bad looking guy. I'm seeing most of you now.
God bless. Yeah, signs
so
will do that. So they happen. The conversation can open up from that. Thank God. That's luck. But
when you say conversation at this point, you're talking mostly messaging back and forth?
Texting, yeah.
Have you ever done a FaceTime or a phone call before meeting, or is that something that doesn't really happen?
One lady in Oakland, California, when I was on a work trip, we had a video call. That was the only time I've ever done a video date through Bumble.
Seems like a weird circumstance to do it.
It hurt, my friend. Not okay.
Yeah. All right, so
I would do just text. Texting is great. As much as it takes my whole life in those moments where I'm trying to actively date or set up dates, I write pretty long chunks of text. And if I'm getting long chunks of text back, that can be really intoxicating. And I find myself kind of chasing that beautiful connection dynamic.
How beautiful is the connection dynamic, actually? You said you're chasing it, and it can just be how it feels. Feeling something is beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, getting somebody to write LOL is so weirdly affirming in a way that feels kind of nakedly
That's weird. That's weird.
I probably live for that more than I should.
Wow.
Yeah. It's great, though. Making other ladies laugh on Bumble is a very stupid obsession of mine in those times.
And you are a very humoristic writer. I love getting texts. I don't tend to do the long text thing with you.
Sure, no.
But okay, and then let's say, and to what degree? This is part of my curiosity. To what degree do you fabricate a person in your mind completely? Because I know at times for me, even before,
Whole cloth.
like I'll get a girl that just messages me out of the blue sometimes now, and I just before we're 3 messages in, man, this person is exactly what I need.
With very little regard for, I mean, yeah, there's curiosity, but you can make a lot of assumptions. Like, this person has everything together. Look at them. They're doing this, they're doing that. A person who's, I mean, maybe gonna rub me 100% the wrong way in a year and a half is not this person. There's no way. And, everybody will rub you the wrong way a year and a half down the line.
Yes.
All that upfront romanticism is kind of the scourge of availability. We've got all of these shiny options that are just clicking so readily with so little effort that we over-index that lack of effort and under-index perhaps deeper probing questions about emotional insecurities. I think if any girl had gotten to the bottom of whether I was emotionally available early in our conversations, they would probably not have dated me as long as they did.
Right, but they're in the same boat of creating you out to be this guy.
I assume they must. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just that law-worthy.
So so I'm guessing by now you're talking about more once you actually experience the physical, the smell of a person, just the conversation, the vibe, the little bits of touch that happen earlier, which is beautiful. That's a wonderful place to be.
Just all that caution. I mean, yeah. Ugh. You're both running through your heads.
And to some degree, it's necessary, right, to fall for somebody like that, because otherwise we're all just too sick to be fallen for, unfortunately. But if you were
Thank God for butterflies, Lou.
Thank God for butterflies. But if you were to start to index, as you put it, actual responsible questions to ask, what would be some of those questions to dig deeper than just that? Wow, this is really easy right now.
Yeah. How do you self-soothe? That would probably be an important question for me specifically to ask. As a person who finds constant contact taxing, being 100% available to another person is very much challenging for me, and I get really overwhelmed if somebody starts to ask more of me than I feel I have to give. And I also am so averse to conflict that I have a hard time bringing up when that point has been reached. I just kind of get into my own head and start building resentment towards that person for taking from me what they didn't know they were extracting.
Right. And how does that feel, and how does that manifest? What's the actual feeling of it?
Oh, for me, it's visceral. It's the vagus nerve, according to my therapist. Fight, flight, or freeze. You end up in a position where you feel attacked and overwhelmed by that onslaught, and my flavor is typically freeze. I'm not a conflict guy, and I'm not just gonna fucking drive away. Sorry to swear. But I think about it, and I feel like I can't flee because I'm trying to be as good a person as I can in that circumstance, acknowledging that I'm their partner, and trying to meet them at their emotional needs, but I end up just not being able to even talk. I'm kind of grunting and staring into the middle of the distance, probably playing with my hair, just like slowly kind of losing it. And that's tough. I'm still trying to work on being more open with where I'm at emotionally at a given moment. Changing my narrator to that of reaching out and connecting as opposed to feeling the stress of having to being forced into a position. That gives me anxiety when I could just try to think, yeah, I actually do care about this person. This person is in pain, and if I just make a tiny effort to reach back out to them, everything could change so much faster than it otherwise would.
Right.
But I have a hard time being vulnerable, Lou. You might not know it from a sauna interview.
Oh yeah, I mean, you assume it about everybody, and I guess as... One second, I'm opening this door for a second. I'm grabbing water. I'm gonna cool it down a touch.
Yeah, let's take a break.
Yeah, we just leave the door open. Let's cool it down a bit.
We're running the mic. We're leaving it run.
Let's take a 5 second.
Holy hell.
Look where this is going, man. Look where this is going.
So 180 degrees of blood and honesty.
Exactly.
Woo. Do that, Lou.
Yep, let's do it.
Let's do it. Hydrating. Remember your breathing, everybody.
Tis hot, tis hot.
Straighten your back, take a deep breath.
So what's the vulnerability that you're afraid of in that setting? What's the outcome that scares you so much about this conversation? Look, I need more space, whatever it is.
I think it's the fight part of my vagus nerve, honestly. I feel like if I unfreeze, I'm gonna fight, and I'm afraid of fighting. And so my natural inclination when I'm frozen is to like start just yelling all the great points I have. But I also have such a hard time yelling. I can't really do it. And it ends out coming out as passive aggression. I'm still in a fight mode. I'm not thinking about repairing our connection.
Right.
Which is an option that's always there to any of us and so hard to remember in the moment.
Right. And so the vulnerability is if you unfreeze, you fight.
But that fight might be what needs to happen in order to get me to a place where I'm comfortable being that vulnerable.
Right. And so what's the underlying fear? Because underneath any bit of rage I've ever had or fight I've ever had has been fear. So there's the fear of fighting, and what's underneath the fear of fighting?
Weakness? I think it's the loss of control. It's the loss of security that knows I am choosing to not say anything right now. I'm choosing to play it close to the vest and not share what's going on in my head. When, you do that for as many years as I have, and it can be really challenging to even access what's in your head, especially when you're overwhelmed and your mind's kind of a blank from sitting and spinning. So that is the challenge of vulnerability.
Yeah, absence of control, and that's, to harken back to our security discussion before, that's something I try to actually acknowledge, like, how much security is here. And I can share that I have changed a lot on the way that I feel about security regarding relationships specifically and life altogether, because I thought I was right there in the pocket. It's like I was a married guy with a kid and, living a really active and fulfilling life with my wife who, shut the door quick, get it hot, who I love very much and just beautiful relationship. And then, things changed and all of a sudden it was a very difficult process, and there was something in me that just flipped to, there is no security. No. And now I think that part of the reason that I am still single at this moment is because of that same vulnerability dynamic where it's like, you open that door to somebody to fall in love, and then you do lose control, and as much as you can give your best self to somebody, they can reject that self, or they can go in a different direction, and there's just a part of me now, I'm afraid, I'm not afraid to admit it, but I kind of feel like all relationships are doomed. When I see people that are married with 2 kids, I think, oh, you poor miserable bastards. And I'm sorry that I feel that way, but I understand.
That's real, man.
Yeah.
Oh, it has to be. It 100% is so many days out of an average life. You got to find that payoff. Where is it? Does the scale of Lady Justice sit on a balance?
So what is the payoff as a guy that values security? What is the security? Because on one hand you're saying you value security, and on the other hand you're saying that you also value space and not feeling accosted by somebody else taking advantage of your time. So what is the security that you feel like you want or need? Because I've known you to pursue relationships, with a veracity that I generally don't, and I'm curious, that's okay.
Yeah, it's real.
What's the security there, or what are some of the underlying motives there?
Well, Lou, I always feel like I learned what I needed to learn before getting back into the next thing. And damned if I'm not wrong every time. Yeah. Maybe that's the value in getting married young. You just kind of put your skin in the game and saddle up to be on the bad side of the tracks. You know it's going to happen, but you also know that at the end of the day, God willing, 50% of the time, that person will wake up next to you. Right. And that's a real comfort. That security is huge. And when it's healthy, when you're both in it and you're both being really open and vulnerable with one another, you have that leeway. I mean, it's Moby Dick, Lou. I can't get the dynamic that I continually search for. And it's such buy-in from both parties, and we're internet dating, so the options are quite unlike anything we've ever experienced. The potential is forever the carrot that that we can't reach, and yet it's biomechanically engineered to make us keep reaching.
Right.
We're thoroughly hacked and understood.
Right. And so there's the carrot, and you've started to flesh it out, but if you could put names to what are the characteristics that you think, I'm talking core characteristics of a person, that learning what you've learned over your last number of relationships, what are the core characteristics that you think would play well with your core characteristics?
Yeah, I mean, that's worth acknowledging. Nobody's everything for anybody.
Right.
Like, you've got to pin down your own particularities and try to find somebody, like in my case, who's not acting chaotically or too impulsive or too rigid with plans, somebody who relies a little too heavily on you to entertain or console them. Because I'm an introvert, and I prefer mostly a lot of alone time in my life. Even though I love having that deep connection, I'm sure there's people out there, and they always, I feel like I'm upfront about that want, but I don't know. I think it's just natural for any of us to want more than our partner has to give at some point, and to feel progressively more comfortable asking for it.
Right. Yep, hence what was fine before is no longer fine. And maybe simultaneously being willing to give less of what you initially gave. I know for myself there's a lot of things that change for me, and it's something I want to be conscious of in another relationship between month 1 and month 18.
Yeah.
Is that month 1, a lot of interesting dates. Month 18, a lot of me doing my own stuff, and hey, this is what I'm into now, It was you. I really artistically pursued you for a while when you were my thing.
My muse.
It's not great to admit that, and right. And so I had another one. What else do you have to say on the topic?
I guess we just really got to work hard to put ourselves into an empathetic and compassionate perspective. You need both. I think I edge toward empathy more than I ought to. I end up taking on a lot of the inability of a person to self-soothe, and in so doing exhaust myself, because I'm just a bad therapist, identifying too closely with this person who's becoming a patient. And what needs to happen in that moment is to embrace the sensation of empathy, but then push that empathy aside, and in exchange for compassion. That's the vocabulary dichotomy that I've heard it broken down into. 'Cause compassion is the ability to still feel for the pain and suffering of another without accepting that pain and suffering as your own.
Wow. Wow.
Thanks, New Yorker article.
You got to do what you got to do, and yes, and I think that is an interesting, where you reveal yourself out there. It's like, yes, I am this person. That's maybe the 1 month versus the 18-month Eric. It's like 1 month, yeah, I wanted it all. I was taking it. 18 months, hey,
I'm getting toward my
I want
terrible
to go to
twos.
bed. Yeah, like I'm going to bed right now, and that's something that
A little fussy around 18 months.
And one of the lessons that I learned is that like one of the things I really have an eye on in a real way with people that I might potentially court.
My lady.
Is a friend structure of their own. It's like, if you want to be with me, I want to know that you have friends. Because I'm close enough with enough people to know that I can't be everything to anybody. And I don't want to be. And what's ideal for me in a partner is somebody that has the ability and the willingness and the drive to go away for a weekend or a week without me and with the friends. And for us to have a level of security where it's like, hey, that's okay. I'm a big boy. I'll be okay at home. You go out with your friends, and I think that part of our society's messaging is that, like, oh, this is the one, this person's supposed to be everything for me, and it's always this balance of settling versus a realistic look, of like, what kind of work am I willing to put in, and what kind of work is this person willing to put in?
Deep, heavy, impossible to know at the outset. It's a constant negotiation, and that conversation can be really difficult to open with a person like me, who's kind of emotionally unavailable and conflict avoidant. Because you're describing a lot of conflict. If you're running afoul of their highest desires to spend every weekend with you, that becomes a boundary bouncing off a boundary. And not getting passive aggressive or feeling resentment that she's not letting you take your boys' weekend is a huge emotional labor that we all ought to be spending more time on than we do. I mean, speaking exclusively for myself.
Right.
But yeah, that's where I keep hoping to be, and jealousy seems to get the better of me. I think I'm getting better.
Yes. Jealousy that's definitely there. Have you considered women with kids?
I went on a date with a mini golf. Yes, Lou.
Because then you have just a built-in somebody else.
Briefly dated a woman with a husband. There's
we
two kids.
We've all been there. Yeah,
sure.
2023, man. All doors are open, and I say that somewhat in jest, but I also think that I just don't know how it plays having a kid. I obviously do, and there's just a part of me that's like, is this person willing? Because for me, that's somewhere where like I want to have at least some semblance of control. It's like, if you're coming into my life, you're not going there right away. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, you don't need the
Protect your
Albu
daughter.
experience right away. Because she'll get you.
Yeah.
If you don't fall in love
Way
with
more
your daughter,
charming
you'll fall.
than-
Yeah.
Good Lord.
But I want to pivot a little bit and ask the question. I think we're warmed up for it. I'll shut the door quickly so we can get out.
Back to 180.
Yep. So the question is, where are you spiritually now?
Great question. As I alluded to earlier, I have been going regularly to a Sunday meeting of Quakers on the near west end of Madison. The local Friends chapter, capital F. It's a bunch of the nicest, most socially conscious elderly folks and young folks too. People who've been Quakers their whole lives, people who've come out of atheism toward Quakerism maybe. I'm still such a novice, but the appeal is, for me, in gathering with a bunch of spiritual seekers in something of a congregation, chapel. A very Spartan one, no iconography anywhere, no spiritual leader either, just a bunch of pews that face toward the center.
Wow.
Everybody's sitting in silence for 1 hour. There's an early and there's a late service. There's brunch in between. And what you're doing in that silence is listening for the spirit, for the light, for whatever you choose to call your God, to speak directly to you. And they advocate the direct communion with God, or the light, or whatever, because in breaking off from the Catholic Church, they felt it necessary to define no human being more in communion with God than any other human.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we are all the priests of the congregation. And as such, if in that hour you feel the Spirit or light or God has given you something particularly quake-worthy, they advocate waiting until you physically feel the urge to stand and deliver that message. A person with a microphone will come over to you as you stand and allow you to address the gathered friends with whatever profound or, affecting thought that you've been meditating on. With the assumption that it is the light of God talking to you.
Have you heard somebody's testimony that you remember and that moved you?
All the time.
Can you give a
just
couple,
about
one
once.
example?
Sure, yeah. Well, there's the heaven and hell one. That really spoke to me. And, oh, God. Actually, there was one lady who was kind of agonizing over what type of animal she should be eating to most directly and spiritually adhere to her purpose in life. And
No, all jokes aside, that is a very valid question.
Thanks.
I've been known to make fun of vegans, but that is an essential question.
I worry about it too, Lou. I know it's kind
Yes.
of... It's got its charms and hilarity. It's self-serious to no end. But also, yeah, there are real concerns with the direction the planet's heading.
Absolutely.
But I think I like the people who are willing to rise and speak about anxiety and things like that. Or advocating pacifism and understanding a kind of radical acceptance. It's not far off Buddhism, what they're advocating. Just that kind of sitting quietly and acknowledging that you and a group of other people all believe there's something that is divine in our lives. Like humans have some tether to a greater world beyond themselves, whether it's like a collective unconscious or an actual deity. I grew up really religious in the ELCA Lutheran Church, and I've missed that connection so much. Just being there and then getting around the table at the end to talk about any fears or joys, sorrows that might have arisen in the congregation's week since last we met. We'll pass a mic. Just knowing that it's a nice, welcoming environment to be yourself and get on a microphone and kind of have your troubles and double your joys.
Yes. Wow.
It's cool. I hope you come with me, Lou.
I'm going to come.
dragging your ass.
So Sunday we're going to do it. Tomorrow's
I can't
tomorrow's
wait.
a spa day for the boys. Sunday's a spiritual day. And yeah, I guess what sticks out from the last thing is people sharing their fears, and their uncertainties. And I think one thing that I've been fortunate enough to learn, and I've never seen it fail, is that at the very moment that you share something real with another person, maybe not always recommended in the workplace, but generally, even somebody that just seems so hard and that seems to live in a world that's so different from yours, as soon as you share something that's actually real, I don't think there's a person out there really that has a defense against that. And there's no way to go besides for getting real. And then you dig to the bottom there and it's like, oh, we're both afraid, We're both creatures with limited defenses that are just trudging towards our own death.
You can chase
At
that
this
in
moment.
You can chase that in the Bumble conversations, or you can chase that with a congregation of people across a spectrum of ages, getting all kinds of perspectives. What worries an 80-year-old is a lot different than what worries me. And is that
true?
valuable?
Is that true? Is that actually true?
Oh my God, 100%.
Okay.
80-year-olds don't have girlfriends they're kind of dating, or
Yeah, I suppose. Maybe some of them do.
they've got hips and knees, Lou.
Hips and knees that need to be shaken.
Uh-huh.
But another reflection I want to make on this congregation is one is just silence. I'm a very strong believer in silence. I spend a fair amount of time with silence very actively, and I don't have to define what that does for me. I just know that it does.
You're as close to a yogi as I have in my life, Lou.
Wow, that's
No joke.
And the other piece, and this is something that I first heard in this term from Alan Watts, of whom I'm a big fan, R.I.P. He sort of critiques Christianity. Now, Christianity's great. I mean, honestly, I love the story of Jesus, but one of his critiques of that is that you take this man, the power of Jesus is that he is a man. He's an exceptional man. And instead of actually challenging us to follow the example of this man, you take him and you put him up on deity status and you separate him from us and you put him in another world. And so the example of Jesus becomes mostly water and a tiny shot of whatever it is you need a shot of, instead of the whole thing.
And it's that which you continually fail to achieve and access.
Right. And for me, there's just this, I think about this a lot, and I didn't expect to go here, but this man whose entire purpose, presumably, was to live and demonstrate a certain way based on compassion for these people, and in his last moments, still having this moment when he's going to a cross, like, my God, why have you forsaken me? If that's not a man, I don't know what is. And also, just this element, like, that to me that's where the vulnerability is. That's where, like, the worst fear we could possibly face is all these people that celebrated us a week before, all lining up and shouting, kill this man, hang him on the cross. He's standing there like, yo, I was a celebrity on Sunday. It's Friday, and you guys are ordering me. Can you imagine that?
Your dad is the one who sentences you to die. I mean, yeah. As much as I'm not a biblical literalist, that is a powerful, powerful story. It kept me in the church as long as I was.
Yeah.
Because that's the pain we all have to reckon with. Like the very real New Testament kind of lesson to be gleaned.
Right.
Your gods, your dads, your everyone's gonna let you all the way down. And
yeah.
Having that conviction, but also, I mean, understanding that Jesus was vulnerable in that moment. Jesus didn't know or believe. I mean, he had some notion that he was going to rise again, I suppose, but
either that or he was a really good storyteller.
Sure thought he was about to get forsaken, yeah.
It's really important to me that you guys believe. I got it all. Sorry.
He can't quite read what he wrote on his hand.
Not to trivialize, but yeah, absolutely. And to me, I think if you dig into words like vulnerability and fear, it's simple for me. It's, the fear of rejection by my fellow people. And I can tell you time and time again, and I often do, like, I think you're great, I love you as you are, I accept you, but you can't hear that when I say it a lot of times. No. And if you were to say it to me, I can't hear it, and part of us just stays locked up in this box of, oh man, nothing I do is enough.
I try to have a big vocabulary so it makes the most sense possible. And just still, I don't think that works, Lou. I've been trying a long time.
I've been trying.
I don't make more sense by being verbose.
I think that I would agree with that statement. But I've been doing it with you for a long time too, and I do really value.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a decade now. Sometimes in the sauna, sometimes out of the sauna, and I'm really excited to have you. This is a new venture for both of us, and we are in a sauna recording a podcast. Man, I'd say we made it.
You're still the edgy little brother of the Lauren I used to work with. Love you, Lou Dog.
I love you too, man. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely.